now. And so as we're getting ready here, I want to introduce Carol to the group. Well, many of you already met Carol, and you know how dynamic she's been to our group for the last 14 years. One more year and she'll get her 15-year pin. Wow. So that's great. She's been, from the get-go, she's been probably the most prolific master gardener I've ever been associated with. She's done so many great things for our group. She's in charge of the Garden Expo for many, many years. She's still helping the co-do that. She's kind of easing her way. I don't know how quickly she'll ease her way out of that, but unfortunately it had to be canceled this year. But she's been in charge of her, I don't know what her greatest claim to fame is, but I think it's been the educational program. She's been in charge of that committee, and it's been tremendous over the last several years, many, many years now, that encourages other people to give talks like she's doing right here. She's given these talks. She's probably done about 5, 6 different topics. She's even spoken to a national agricultural agents meeting a couple years ago. So she's, I think she had those skills all along, but she certainly has showed them off in the Master Gardener program. I want to also thank her son, Kevin, who's helped her to the technological stuff. She'll admit that maybe like me too, you need a little help in that field, but Kevin, her son, is not only helping her today, but he's conducted a class too on speaker readiness and how to do PowerPoints like this and give talks. So we're really lucky to have him assist Carol and get it going today. So Carol, thank you again for coming this morning, waking up. I don't know if you still have your shoes on yet. I don't have my shoes on. So thank you very much.
I dressed appropriate just for everybody. But it is kind of nice because actually by the time I was actually getting up, I would have had to have been leaving from here to get to the Ag Center. So that part was kind of nice this morning. I will say hello to everybody and welcome you. I will say that this year's intern class is going to be historical. That's for sure. You can always look back that this was a major turning point for us because learning how to compensate for the being inside, the ideas of using the Zoom and so forth, leaves us another venue that we can probably pursue later to have more classes online and work our way to an international SC, Search for Excellence.
That's right.
So that will work good. And you met my son a while ago, Kevin. When he does my PowerPoints and everything, and when he was little, going to school, I tell him to do all of his own research, and I would help him with his project, you know, the artwork and some of the other stuff. And now that we've changed the wheels, I have to do the research. He does all the presentation work for me. So we kind of switched in that one. But he's very helpful to me because the technical stuff is not my thing. But we'll get on into the propagation. The handout that Shirley sent out to you, this is not on the entire presentation. It doesn't even cover the 6 methods of that. What it is a list of plants that either you can propagate through seeds, through division or layering, cuttings, and the tissue grafting and so forth. This is what we'll go through, but this is a list of the plants and tells you how best to propagate those particular ones. They're most of the common plants that we have in our yards that we want to use. The only thing that we'll always have a disclaimer for is that any plant that you've got that is a copyrighted plant, you cannot, you can propagate it for yourself, but not to share or give to anybody else and so forth. And there are some people that have gotten in trouble legally with that. So you do want to be kind of careful with some of that stuff on that one. But I hope you can use that particular handout for the different ways it's easier to propagate certain plants. Now we talk about what is propagation.
You do your zoom in on
Okay, I'm getting technical advice here. Okay. When you propagate, basically what you're doing, and you're making baby plants, which you can see here. Hold the control button down and the left button. See all these, you got one little plant over here, and you can, by the time you divide them, then you're looking at all the baby plants that you can get from that. That helps us economically. We want to support our nurseries and everything, but you know, plants are expensive. So if we can have more of the same, or maybe it's a favorite plant that you just really, really love, and you can't find it anymore. Maybe it was an heirloom or something like that that you've gotten, and then you want to get more of that, then this is what you want to do with it. There are two primary forms of propagation. One is sexual propagation and the asexual propagation. When Kevin was making this slide for me, he wanted to title it Sex in the Garden, which I did not let him do on that one. But the two ways to do that, and of course, the sexual propagation is the producing through seeds, and then which is readily available in many plants. And with the asexual propagation, that takes another part of the plant and uses it for propagation. And we call those divisions and layers, cuttings, grafting, and a tissue culture. But that's using another part of the plant. There are 6 methods all total that are good for propagation, and that you see them on the screen. The seeds, which I say are readily available. Division, which we're very used to in many of our plants. Layering may be new to some people. Cuttings is a challenge at times, and grafting is even more so. And then tissue culture, we don't really do at home, but this was on here so that you will know how many millions of plants we have. If you just remember how many plants would be bought in Hamilton County alone, where would a place be able to make that many? And so this is why they use the tissue culture, and we'll have some information on that a little bit later. As for seed, sexual propagation, the advantages, of course, are they are fast and a fast way to get plants most of the time. As long as the seeds are very good, then it is a good place to get more plants. They're easy to do and they're economical. However, there are some disadvantages to the seeds. Some plants, especially your hybrids, do not come back like they'll come back as the parent's plant if it's a hybrid. So when you plant the seed, you may not, probably won't get the exact particular plant that you had because the seeds are a combination of the other plants that made that particular hybrid. And some plants are also difficult to propagate from seeds. Some things just are not as good, and some seeds need to be sown directly into the ground, and some need to be in the pots. And so there's a little learning curve on some of the different seeds. Also, the germination rate is about 75%, and that's using the very best seed. The older the seeds, the less germination you'll get. So you want to be sure that you have as good a seed as possible. The rate of how good the seed will grow depends on the temperatures and moisture, sunlight, where it is, time of year. It has a lot to do with that. The quality of the seed should be actually used within a year, which is the best time to do it. Seed packet. It is filled with very important information. It will tell you the germination rate. It will tell you the whether it's a sun plant or a shade or a part sun and plant. It will give you the amount of days it takes for it to germinate. And even there's a map on some of them that shows you to be sure that you're in the right zone for that particular seed. The tells you about the moisture, the type of soil, whether it needs a lot of water or less. And so it's very important to read that. It can be, maybe it's deer resistant, or it's a butterfly, it's a nature a pollinator type of plant that will bring more beneficials to your yard. So read that information very carefully. But there is one thing, of course, that's on the bottom of the packet, And that's the date of the seeds that you will see down there at the bottom. That's the important part. The seeds that you get should say sell by December 2020 if we're going to use them this year.
Click on your picture. PowerPoint shows up. You're showing your examples.
I held it down and showed it. Okay.
You show the plants.
All right. Just excuse me every so often. He gives me a technical tip here on that one. But anyway, that's the important date that you will do. There are three main parts to a seed. We have the outer coat, which is readily, you can see that. And then you'll see the first thing that comes out of the seed will be the cotyledons, and that is this little seed leaves. And then you'll see, of course, you have the embryo, which is the actual plant before it starts to go ahead and send up its leaves. So this is the little first leaves that will come up right here, and they gradually work its way out until they get the actual plant. Now, there are two things that have to happen with the seeds. Well, the two things that you do with them: scarification and stratification. Scarification is when you've got a very hard seed. That's your okra, your nasturtium, beans, just any of those that are really, really hard seeds on that one. They have to sometimes have a little nick put in, take a little knife edge and just kind of nick the outer coating, because it takes a lot longer for that to break down in the soil. So if you have a little nick to it, then that way the water can go ahead and start getting in the seed and basically waking the seed up. The seed has been dormant. It's because it was collected months before, and so it needs to be woken up. So therefore, if you nick it a little bit, it'll do that. You could also soak them overnight, and that will help as well. The other thing is stratification, and all seeds must go through stratification, which means that it has to go through a cold period. You can do it in the refrigerator too, but it needs to be through a cold period. That is just part of nature that it has to have. So when you collect your seeds, don't store them in a warm place all winter long or wherever it is. Be sure that they're in a cool place. Put them out in the garage, the basement, or like I say, even in the refrigerator, so that they have this cold period of time to go through. Then that helps them to be more viable. Now, to start your seed starting thing, first of all, you want to start the seeds, and after you've got good seeds, you want to start the seeds in a good potting mixture. And I'm going to turn the computer a little bit so the camera will show you over here. And I have, it's showing you, I hope it is. Now what you want me to do?
If they double click on your picture, they'll see.
And if my son says, if you will double click on my picture that I'm showing you, it'll be larger on your screen, and you will be able to show you. And this is, I'll get it right there. And this is the potting mix, and it's made, this is for seed starting, and this is just like potting mix. This is Miracle Grow, which is basically the beginners. And then the seed starting mix, I have to pick that up at Lowe's on that one. But this is things that you want to start. You want the seeds to be started in a good sterile soil. You don't want to try to take them from the soil outside if you're going to be doing it if you're going to be working with the seeds on the inside. But have a good starting medium. Then you talk about your containers. Now you can purchase containers with the tops on it. I picked this one up at the dollar store. It has three parts to it. It has the tray, and it has another little section here. These are all the little potting places. I think there's supposed to be like 70 something on here. Pot the seeds with. And then it comes with a little lid to make a dome, so that you're making a mini greenhouse is basically what you're doing with this particular thing. And I can't see myself in there. Okay, if you got that right there, that is an easy way. Now you can buy those you can buy something that like your strawberries come in, something like that that's got a lid to it. what you will do is you will put your growing your seed medium about halfway in the bottom, fill it up. You can do a little bit of a trench type thing and put your seeds in that, cover it over. You want the soil to be moist, but not wet, but enough to, just like a good moist soil that you want to do that when you put the seeds. Now the seeds usually go about the depth that they are the size. The packet will tell you how far to put it in the ground, 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 an inch. Very few seeds would ever go more than an inch. So that would be the depth that you would ever need. If you've got the little bitty seeds, then sometimes they say like 1/8 of an inch or barely, you just kind of sprinkle them on the top of the soil, take a little bit of soil, sprinkle it on top, and then use a spritz bottle and just spritz it all down and make sure that it's nice and moist. And then you'll put the top on it. Now at the bottom, and I have a tray here, so that was okay, but if you don't have a tray, then you want to put little bit of hose in there because you don't want any kind of water to sit up in there if you have to water it later. Watch on the top, the clear top, as long as it's got moisture bubbles on it, then everything is okay. But if it starts to look dry, then open the container, do some spritzing again with the water and keep it moist. And that gives you a little mini greenhouse. Now, when you set those inside the house, do not put them directly into a sunny window. Set them back ways. You want plenty of light, but you don't want the hot sun coming in through the windows. So set them back a little bit. Be sure they've got plenty of light. Now, when they start to reach a certain size, they'll get about, maybe they'll poke their little heads out. They'll get about 1 inch tall, maybe 2 inches tall. Then they're ready to get out of that and get into a pot. Now, they're going to be very tender. So when you take them out, you need to use maybe some tweezers or some kind of something to catch them with, a little bit of soil. Take them over and then put them in the pot that they're going to do the growing in. At that point, you'll probably move it to like a 4-inch for that when you do it. Then it will grow there for a while. Be sure you label them, of course, and then they'll get to be a pretty good sized plant. Now then, April the 15th is our last freeze date. So here in Chattanooga area, after April 15th, we are safe to start planting outside our tender plants. So therefore, you want to back up your germination period and everything. If you want to go directly out, if you want the 1st of May, whatever it is, figure how many days back from germination, allow yourself another couple of weeks past that to let the plant get a pretty good size and get healthy before you take it out. But when you take it out of its controlled environment, you're going to do a process called hardening off. You want to take the tray outside in the sun. You're going to take it out for like an hour or something like that on a nice pretty day. Then you'll bring it back in. Then the next day you can take it out for a couple hours. And you do this for like a week, just gradually giving it a little bit more time every day. And that's called hardening it off. After about a week to 10 days, so outside. When you get the plants at the stores, of course, they've already gone through all this period. They've gone through shipping and everything. So they have already had the process done. If you don't want to buy the mix and you can get the ingredients, there is a formula here on the screen that shows you a good growing medium recipe that you can use if you can get all the ingredients. I find it hard to find the super phosphate there. That is one I haven't been able to come up with. I can find the others, but it's a lot easier just to actually go and buy good quality growing medium. Now then, after the season's over and you want to harvest your seeds and keep them for the next year, these are the methods that you will use to collect them. The first method is the dry method. That one is pretty easy. That's the flower heads. That's a picture of a marigold there. And of course, it's full of seeds. Some of them are seed pods, and some of them are little burrows. I've got a seed pod right here. I'll put it in front of the camera so you can see it. This happens to be a purple hyson bean. And you can see that little seed pod. And the seed is inside that crusty little brown area. To plant the whole thing, you can break it apart, get the seed out of it, or you can just leave it in there. most of the time the seed pods, at least crush them, even if you don't take them out individually, crush them a little bit so that they're ready to start to grow. And everything I hit the wrong little button, of course. There we go. And the next one is the wet method, and that's a little bit more challenging. That's for like cucumbers and tomatoes and squash and things like that. What you have to do on that is that you have to take the fruit itself, either in slices or however you want to do it, and as much as possible, break away as much as you can. But the part that's got the seeds, put it in a jar with some water and put a lid on it. And then shake it up and can break, so it will break away all of the fibers and everything, and then let it settle down, let it sit there for a couple of days. And then you want to pour the mixture through a paper towel. Now, it is going to smell bad. It's been sitting in there. It's not going to smell good. So take it outside and pour it on the paper towel. After the moisture goes through the paper towel, what's left on the top will be the seeds, and they will dry there as well as the paper towel. And once everything is dry, then you can pick them off with the paper towel. And that's the best way to get those particular ones. Now for storing, all seeds should be stored in either a brown paper bag or an envelope. I have mine here that I was pulling out a while ago in an envelope. It's easy to put them there, put the name of the plant, what's on there, any other information that you need to put on. Put the date that you took your seeds to be sure you've got, what year that you've got them on that one. Store them in that. You will know that when you go to the stores and you buy, seeds are always in a paper container. They are never, ever, 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 never in anything plastic. If you put your seeds in plastic, they will mold, and then they will sour and they go bad. Now, if you may collect them, you may share them with somebody. It's easy to do that. There's several people gathering. But if you do that, and we did that one time up at the Ag Center, Tom had a plant up there, and we all was getting seeds from it. The only thing we had was some plastic bags. So we put them in the plastic bags, but as soon as we got home, we took the seeds out and then put them in an envelope or something that's paper. And that's how you want to store your seeds. And remember, like I said before, they have to go through a cold period before you can use them again. Now we come to the next part, which is for division. This is probably one of our more favorite ways, and many people are familiar with this. We often take up things and divide them. Some things are very tight, as you will see down here, and grasses and things like that. They are very tight clumps, and they're not going to break apart very easy. So get you a small little pruning saw right there, and it does not hurt to open up the leaves and then just saw right down the middle. Because what you're going to do is you're going to divide something probably in fourths. It would be very rare that you would divide it anymore, and sometimes maybe not even in fourths, because you want a good sturdy clump. Do not plant your little plants as an orphan. Don't plant one little stem by itself. It's been used to growing with its family, and it doesn't like to be separated. So give it some other family members around there. Make sure that you've got several different stalks together. A healthier growing plant, and it will produce better for you and faster. If you have down at the bottom on this one over here, this one here is like a hosta plant right there. You will see right down there, right above the dirt and the whitish part, that's called the crown. And if plants have a crown, you must have part of that crown in your division so that it will grow. Without the crown, it won't work, because of any plant that has a crown must have part of that, and many of them do. For your daylilies, up here at the top, this one right here, all those little bubblets, as I call them, but little rhizomes really, are there. If you're going to plant it directly, as soon as you divide it, then go ahead and it's all right. But if you're going to store it, or you're sharing it, or even if you're selling it, and so forth. In fact, when you buy them, you'll find out that they're this way. You want to wash the dirt off of those, all those roots and everything. You want to wash it off, and then you get ready to store it. however you're going to do this one, if you're sharing it with a friend or whatever. Now then, after when you get ready to plant it again, it has dried out. And so now you need to wake it up. So then soak it overnight in a bucket of water before you plant it in the ground after it's been stored for a while. It's very important to get the garden soil and everything off of it to prevent disease, bacteria, little microorganisms, little bugs, anything that might be in it that you try to store that will mess up the roots of the plant. Now in the bottom section, you see grasses. Now our ornamental grasses, they die out in the middle a lot. This is just the nature, that's what they do. They're constantly looking for better soil, so they keep moving out away from the middle. If you want to restore that, dig all of that out and put fresh soil in there, and the plant will start to go back in and it will fill back in that bare spot. When you dig those up, if you just want to go ahead and dig up the outer unit, go ahead and dig up the outer unit, do the dividing and replant the whole thing. You can do it that way as well. But if you just got one and you just want to restore it, you don't want to keep growing out, you want to stay in the landscape, you've got it lined up and you've got these little places that you want it to be, then that's what you would do to restore your ornamental grasses. All right. Then we come to our bulbs, the corms, rhizomes, or stolons, that's the same word, tubers, and the tuberous roots. And you can see the various plants that come from. Many of the tubers and the tuberous roots we actually eat. We grow them just to eat those things. But I would advise eating the ones from the tulips and the narcissus and lily of the valley. Not probably a good idea on that one. But we do. Some of them are for eating. Now we come to the bulbs. All the bulbs have an outer coating on that. It's like a paper-like coating that they've got on the outside. You can see in the diagram there, it's what covers it. I've got some here. These are some daffodil bulbs that I've got. And you can see that. You see this, of course, you're familiar with the bulbs, the outer coatings. But I also show you, if you'll notice that those two bulbs, how they're stuck together right there. But right there in the middle, this is where they would be divided. When the bulbs come out of the ground and they're stuck together right where they are, that's where you can take and cut them right apart. And that's a safe place to move them. They're each still going to have some roots attached and everything, and they're ready then to be planted. Ah, got dirt all over the computer. Okay. The part of the plant, this part right here, is where the leaves are going to come from. They're the first things to come out of the top of the bulb. Is right there. This very middle, right in the middle of the bulb is where the flower is formed. And it comes out, of course, after the leaves come up first. There is a basal plate. That's where all the roots come from. So you set your bulbs down on the ground on this plate. And then you see then the bulbs that I just broke apart. This is where they form, is right down here on the bottom around the basal plate is the bulbs. Obviously over here, we've got onions. That's the bulbs. We eat them. And then of course, the same thing over here with garlic. But then you've got the others that we simply just plant. Now, the thing about bulbs is you have to be planted. Rule of thumb is that the larger the bulb, the deeper the plant. But as you can see on this chart, there are a few exceptions. So when you get your bag of bulbs or whatever it is, look on there. They'll usually tell you how far in the ground to go. You can take a tape measure and you can measure the circumference around it. That will also help you tell you how many inches to put in. If it's 2 inches around, it goes 2 inches in the ground. That's just the way it would be. But usually the larger the plant, the larger the bulb, the deeper it goes. However, you can plant them too deep. So if you err on the side of caution, shallow would be better than too deep. You'll get leaves, but you probably won't get very many blooms if they're down too deep. The next one we've got is corms, and the only two plants that I know of that comes from corms are your gladiolas and your crocus. The diagram, the showing of the drawing is not really as good. I'm glad that I found a picture of what they actually look like, because they look like little pots is what they look like. They look like somebody had some little clay pots. And, but you set them on the rounded bottom is where you would set, because actually the part here, this is where all the shoots are going to come up from right there, and the roots are going to come off the bottom. And then when they make little chromels, and they'll have their little babies down there, then you'll eventually, these all will be big enough that they will be more bulbs. They still have the same outer coating tunic. They still have the growing point where the leaves will come out of, that part there. The next one is the rhizomes, or the stolon on that one. And the thing about that is, it's so different, is they grow sideways, and you basically plant them sideways. And when as they produce more, if a shoot comes up here, it'll go out here, there'll be an eye, it'll go up here, it'll move on out this way, it'll send up one through here. In between those places, you can even see where it's starting to grow out to the side. And anytime you've dug up an iris bed that's been there for a while, you can see they're going in all four or five directions from the one there. This eventually, the older one eventually dies out, and the newer ones come on out and take over. But this is where you can cut and divide it. And when you go to plant them, you're going to plant them basically sideways. You can't put them down deep, put them sideways. And even though they may be a fairly good size, they actually do not go below the surface more than a little bit, about an inch and a half or so is all you're going to do. If you get these too deep, you'll never see a bloom. And that's what happens to a lot of, after a long time, you've got mulch, or you've got leaves or things that collect, and you wonder why the irises are not blooming as well and so forth out. One, they're either crowded, which means they need to be divided, or two, there's too much organic matter has got on the top of them and they're down too deep. So that would be what you want to do with your irises. They're closer to the surface. They can actually live on top of the surface. If in many places they can. I'll watch it. That'll happen in my yard a lot, especially if they get crowded. But you get your irises, you get your lily of the valley, you get your cannas, and then ginger. Actually, we eat the rhizomes. That's where the ginger comes from. It's dried out, and then it's grated, and then it's used in all of our cooking. So that's one that we would eat. Then we come to the tubers. Well, we're pretty familiar with that. That's what a potato is. And again, when it's underground, we do eat the potatoes. But what a tuber has is, tubers have eyes. And when you get your potato, you can look at all these little indentions. These are eyes. Everywhere there is an eye is a potential plant, a potential place that leaves will come from. So you can take one potato and cut it up in 10 different pieces, probably. It's a large one. And as long as it's got an eye and a pretty good substantial thing around it there, then you've got a plant. It will send its roots out from another part, and then from that eye, up goes the shoot for the stem, eventually the leaves, and so forth. Your begonias, your glycemins are some of them that grow from the tubers, and then of course the potatoes, sweet potatoes, and regular potatoes are the tubers that we plant, get the plant, and then of course we grow more, and that's what we eat those down there. The next is the tuberous roots. Your daylilies, your dahlias, sweet potatoes, and so forth. The tuberous roots that we eat are the beets, carrots, radishes, and turnips. And those are the ones we grow just for eating, and that's what we do on the soil. If you want to know anything, dahlias now in our area, most of the dahlias have to come in. There are some varieties that can stay out. And if you want to know anything about dahlias, contact Holly Koff, because she grows these things and they're beautiful in her yard. So she knows about that. And the daylilies, we've got Peggy Dyer and George Ganaway. They can tell you anything about daylilies. So we've got some people in our group that really, these are their babies. So be sure and contact them if you want information about that. Then we come to the next part of propagation, and that's layering. This is one of my favorite ways. that I like to do, because I don't really, it's one of the most successful ones. This is the way nature does it by itself, because the new little branch that's growing and going to make a plant is still attached to mama. And so it's still getting its nutrients from the parent plant. And therefore it's the success rate is very good. What happens is, as you can see in the diagrams, a branch lays over, it touches the ground. Hydrangeas will do this by themselves. A lot of different plants that have low limbs will reproduce that. I played around with a stem off of one of my loropetalums last year, and I was just looking and noticing that I've got a little bush coming up where I had laid it over. There are several types there. You can see the types listed and different ways to do it. Sometimes you can take 2 branches. Sometimes you take 1 branch and put it down in 2 different places. That's nature. Maybe the branch went down, it went back over a rock and went down again, took itself up there. The one in the bottom left-hand corner is a branch that's laid down. And as long as it has an eye, every place on that place that has a little nodule, which we call an eye or a nodule, is a potential place to send out roots. And then we see the one on the bottom where we have mounded it up. That would be like the volcano mulch, which of course we preach against greatly. And if you go out and you break back the volcano mulch as such, it's been there for a while, you'll see that the bark is trying to send out roots and so forth, which is not healthy for the plant. But if you want to intentionally try to get, in this case, branches, take the lower leaves off, mound up the dirt, leave it there for 6 months or so, then go back and move it aside, cut it away and divide it, and you would have 4 plants. And that would happen on several bushes that has some stalks like that, if you want to try it. I've never tried that because it's just not my thing to do that, but that is a possibility, and it can be done in certain areas with certain plants on that one. The layering, again, as you see in the drawing, it's taking a branch and bringing it over, putting it on the ground. You can take a little knife if you want to. You can nick it a little bit where it's going to touch the ground. You can add some root tone. You can put just a teeny little bit of soil on it, and then you want to weigh it down. You can use a pin that they're showing there to put it down to the ground, a stake of some sort. And what I've done is I've just used a brick or a rock or something like that, just something to hold it down to the ground, not to crush it, but to hold it down to the ground. It must touch the ground. Now, a few years ago, I was teaching the class on hydrangeas, and this is one of the best ways to propagate hydrangeas. And at that time, I had lost a variegated hydrangea, and a lady in the class, she actually had a variegated hydrangea. And so she went home, and she was intending to surprise me the next year, which she did. She called me the following spring or summer, and she said, "I've got you a plant." So I drove all the way up there. It was clear up to Harrison or wherever it was, which is a long way from my house. But anyway, I drove up there and saw her garden. She has a beautiful garden. And anyway, she took me over and to give me the plant. And I knew immediately that we probably had a problem because she had laid it over on top of a pot. And since she was intending to give me the plant, she was going to have it already in the pot and ready to give it to me. The problem was this doesn't work in a pot, because the area, it did have some roots and everything, but it was still attached to mama as long as it was attached. Once it was cut away from the parent plant, it couldn't make it on its own because it had not had enough time to establish itself. The roots wasn't that healthy because the pot had set above the ground all winter long, and therefore the atmosphere environment around it was not good. It needs to be on the ground. Mother Nature drops it on the ground. So when you're doing the ground layering, be sure it's on the ground, and then it stays there. Leave it like 6 months or something like that. Move the rock and check it. If it looks like it's got some roots, got a good root system, it's ready, and it starts to bush out, it's ready to be cut from the mother plant. If not, leave it there a little bit longer. The next one we come to is air layer. Sister does this and has done it several times. She's on the peninsula in Virginia. And what it happens is you can get larger plants sooner as such, because you go down about 18 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches, 10, wherever it is, down on a branch. You will cut the branch, not in two, you just make a slice into it, a 45-degree angle into it, probably like into a slice of an inch or so. Then you get some sphagnum moss, and you wet it very much. I mean, really, really, really wet it. It's just really wet. And you make yourself like a little mud ball type of thing. The sphagnum moss goes around the branch, and then you put plastic on it. And you take the plastic, you tie it at the top and the bottom. You keep all the air out, everything. You've just really made this a little bubble on the branch. And then you just forget about it. You just leave it alone, and nature takes its course. As the time goes by, the sun comes, the ornament, it's getting all of its nutrients and everything from the plant, and it stays again. And that can take 3 months, it can take 6 months, it can take 9. It just depends on the time of the year that you do it and the type of plant and so forth on there. And but when you see the plastic start to fill up with little roots, and you see it all gathering in there, and you can tell it's got a good root system, then on the bottom of the bottom part there, you can see right there, cut it away from the mother plant, take off the plastic, and then it will be ready to plant. And you will already have a bush that's a foot tall, or something like that, or taller. It depends on what you've got. But that is a faster way of getting taller bushes to do the air layering. I have not done that particular thing, but she has, and she's had success with it. Now then we come to cuttings. And cuttings are from 5 different types of plants. They're herbaceous plants, which are the soft tissue stem plants, softwood, hardwood, semi-hardwood, and then the leaf cuttings. For herbaceous plants, I say coleus, rosemary, geraniums, the philodendron, anything that's got that fleshy stem on it. And it's just really is easy. This is in a little syrup bottle from Cracker Barrel. I stuck it in there. It's so full of roots, I'll probably have to end up breaking the bottle to get it out. But it sits in my window, just a cute little thing to sit there. These are philodendron. And this, along with coleus, I mean, they just almost root overnight. They'll just really root really quickly. And most of you are familiar with that. And so the ones that will root in water are just perfect for that. But some of them, like rosemary and geraniums, they're going to have a growing medium around them for their cuttings. Now, when you make your cuttings, you must have 2 or 3 different nodules on that stem, because that's where the roots have to come from. And that's what's under the water or under the soil. Again, for the medium, it would need to be a growing medium. It doesn't nothing be clay soil, nothing like that. It needs to be something that's light and airy, like a potting mix, so that the roots can develop, because roots are very tender and they've got to push through that soil. So give them something easy to grow and push through. But that's your soft tissues, and they're relatively easy to propagate that way. Then we come to our woody plants, and this is mostly what your handout covers is the woody plants on that one. And they have to, they're cut from the mother plant. The softwood cuttings will be taken at this time of the year, when the things are starting to come out in the spring. You take into late March, if it's been really pretty, or April, along about that, even into May, is your softwood cuttings. That's the young new growth that's coming out. Now it's very tender, so it has to be treated very carefully. You'll cut your stem, as you can see here. The stem, you're going to have at least, 3, 4, 5 of these little leaf nodules, because that's where you're going to get your leaves to come out. And then you want to cut the leaves. Just leave a few leaves at the top and cut them, because you don't want the energy going to the leaves of the plant. You want the energy to go down here to start making roots. Put it in some root tone there, and then put it in the growing medium. It's best, since it's young and fresh and tender, to give it a little microclimate. So make yourself a little greenhouse for it. You can do that with a soda bottle, cut out the bottom, stick it on the top. Or you can take plastic saran wrap or something like that and roll it up and make a little greenhouse for it. This keeps the moisture and everything in there, and just takes care of it like an incubator would. Because like I say, it's young and tender, and it's really needs a lot more care. Hardwood cuttings, on the other hand, are they've been seasoned off. They're hard. They're taken in like November, December. Can take them in October, November, December, even into January. But most of the time, you take them in the first 3 months on that one. And when you have to prune them off because they're going to be hard and stiff. It's after the leaves it's after it's defoliated, and you take them off. You take the stems off. You will notice in the far right hand there that particular stem already has leaf buds on it. If you go out and look at your dogwoods or whatever, you'll see that they're already forming these leaf buds, getting ready for next year. And that's the part that goes in the ground. Those leaf buds are the potential root zones. Again, for these now, because the bark is already hardened, you want to take a sharp razor blade, a knife or something, and scrape off the outer bark. Dip it again in the root tone if you wish. You don't have to, but it's always a good thing to do. And then put it in the growing medium. Now you can make these hothouse boxes or cold frames or whatever you want. Fill it with a good medium and set them out. Literally set them out all winter long. You just set them out in nature. You don't have to do another thing. And I'll get my big pot over here and show you what I took last October. Make your screen a little bit bigger and you can see this. But there's about 20, probably 30 different sticks, basically, is what I did. They were just sticks off of my dappled willow plant, which is a plant that comes out with beautiful variegated leaves all spring and then just turns to green. So it can be used like a hedge even. It's a beautiful plant. But I moved recently and it was too big. I took these cuttings off of it last October. And you can see that with almost without exception, every one of them has got leaves on it. Now, I have not taken them apart out of the pot yet to see how the root systems will go because I think it's just a little bit early. I wouldn't be ready to plant them now anyway. And so it's a little early for that. But when I start to take them out of that pot, I will check the root systems. As long as the root systems look good and healthy, then I will be able to go ahead and pop them in another pot, let them grow for probably another season or so, and then they'll be ready to go out into the yard. And I will have several of this particular plant, which I absolutely love. And it was just sticks. And you can see in that bottom picture, that it was just a whole rows just full of just these sticks. And that's your hardwood cutting. The semi-hardwood ones, the wood cuttings that you will take in like August and September, even as early as July, depending on the plant. And those are your wood cuttings that you can take at that time. It's basically in between the soft and the hard. But I haven't really done a lot with the soft because they're so tender and it does take a lot longer. And the hardwood seemed to work out the best for me on this one. Roses are often done the same way with that, to stick them in and give them a little microclimate type of thing. I put a rose in the ground, a stick in that, put a jar over the top of it, leave it alone, and no time I had a little rose bush. So that's a way to use those cuttings. Now we come to leaf propagation. And for this one, it's African violets, philodendron can be done this way. The jade plant can be done this way as well. All of your succulents, your jade, the cactus, sedums, gloxinias, some begonias are all in this particular category. And as with the sedum, you can see, you'll know the sedum, the leaves are fleshy and they've got the little growing oils and mediums all in there. The aloe veras, all these things have the fleshy type of leaves. When you take those apart, as you can see down here, you break off the leaf, you leave just a little bit of the stem area where it came off. And then you're going to let this kind of dry out. Let it dry out 24 hours, 36 hours, something like that. Let it dry out a little bit, kind of get hard. And then you'll be ready to stick it in the growing medium. As with the African violet leaves over here, You see they're stuck down in there. They're probably in about 1/4 of an inch or so is about where that is. All these are stuck on that. And that is the good way to put those. This is a philodendron, which is up here. I've never tried the African violet leaves. I've tried before, but the philodendron, it's just too easy to do in water. So I've never even fooled with the leaves on that one. But now for the jade plant and your sedums that I just have, these right here, you can just about just lay them on the soil. I just put just a little bit at the end. Go ahead and break them off, leave them off for a little bit, and just kind of lay them there. They will start to grow, and they'll send out those little bubblets down there at the bottom, as you can see right there. And when that starts to show right there, that means that they're also sending roots down into the soil. And then they are ready to start making into a plant for the sedum and so forth. Now this one here, which we just always call the mother-in-law's tongue as such, those leaves and everything are very hard. So you can actually cut them apart with a knife, and then right through the middle, there is a vein. And so sometimes out this way too. Where that vein is, this is the part where the cut is. This is where it's going to go in the soil, and it's going to go up about halfway. You're going to put it about halfway into the soil. You're cutting for this one, or a half inch, depends on how much you cut it into a half inch or what. This is what you'll put into the medium for that one. All right, then we move on to grafting. There are 2 forms of grafting. And one is called budding. But this basic grafting is you will get a rootstock, which people order, the orchards and people like that, they'll order the rootstock. And then the part that you're going to graft onto it, this part is called the scion. It is best to graft plants together, roses to roses, pears to pears, apples to pears, and apples and apples, and to stay within the same thing. However, you'll see advertisements. Sometimes they'll say, buy this tree with 3 fruits on it and stuff like that. That's where they've tried to graft different fruits together and to grow in. Some experimental places they may have done that, but it's not very wise to do it. The people with the orchards, this is how they get more apple trees and things for there. It's the grafting method. What you do is your root stock, it needs to be about a half inch in circumference for that one. You cut across the top, and then the scion is cut like a wedge, and it goes down into the rootstock down through there, and then you're going to wrap it together. You wrap it and hold it tight as you can all the way around this way. Now up here on your scion, you've got to have the leaf nodules. This was a rose bush here. So you've got to have where the thorns are, wherever it is. That's the potential places for the leaves to make right there. So be sure you've got several of those up above on your scion that you put onto it. Then you leave it wrapped up. You wrap it up, you wrap it up. You can put the plastic around it. You can put a lot of whatever wrappings that you want to use. And then when you start to see leaves come out up here at the top, then you'll know it's starting to take hold. If you get leaves down here on the rootstock, then you pick them off. You do not want any of the energy going into the rootstock. You want all the energy to go into the scion and go on up to make a plant. Once you start to see all of this good, healthy leaves and everything up here, you can take it off, and you should see that it's starting to heal together down here, and it's safe then to uncover it when you're grafting. Now then, tomato grafting, I took a class at it and did it once. It's a little too tedious for me. Katie down at the food bank, our Katie, she does this, and she enjoys it. But what it is you take the tomato and you cut it at a 45-degree angle, and put another different type of on it, put 2 different together to get a different variety. And then you use these little clips down here at the bottom, these little plastic clips, like little clothespins type of things. And the stalks go in between those little holes. And then as time goes by, they heal together and become another plant for you. If you took the 2 together, sometimes they do 2 at 45-degree angle, leaving both the dirt sources and the root sources. When they heal together, then they cut away the one that they don't want to leave the new one that they have grown. And you can see them all here in the tray. Our state organizer, Master Gardener organizer, she teaches this class and she does it a lot on that one. But this is your tomato grafting. And last night we had one of our interns to tell us, who's taken the class, that for the tomatoes, you can do a lot of tomatoes. You can take the top off and cut it off, and you can actually put it in water and root it as well. I need to add that to you because he told that I have never tried that. He told me that last night. We always learn something from each other. Budding. This is the one that a lot of the orchard people have gone to doing more than the grafting, because it seems to be a more success rate for them. And what they do is they take the tree, the current tree that they have, or branch, or whatever it is that they've got, and they make a T-cut across there. And when they make the T-cut, then they pull back the bark and get to the inner bark. And then from another branch, another different tree, they will take and cut almost like a canoe boat. They take out this little cutting with a leaf nodule. It has to have the leaf nodule on there. They cut it out, they slice it off like that. They bring it over and they set it in this groove that they've made. They set this little leaf nodule cut in that T square, and then they bind it all together. This one they're showing the little leaf nodule showing, but over here they put a little bit of a plastic thing around it that you could see. But anyway, they wrap it all together and they just leave it alone. And then when that leaf nodule starts to produce leaves, then when it gets up here and it's substantial amount of leaves, then they'll go back and they'll cut off the top over here, and they'll let this then become the new plant. And that's budding. This can be done in the middle of winter, and it's mostly when it's done. So that's why it's so good for the orchard owners, because that's their down season. And so that's a good time for them to start their propagation, is during the months in the wintertime. But because as spring hits, they start their spraying and getting ready then for the fruits in the fall until their summer is too busy. So this is why they enjoy doing this one, because it's easier to do in the winter months. Then we come to tissue cultures. And I put this one in here as much for knowledge, because this is not anything that you would be doing at home. This has to be in a sterile environment. It has to, as you can see, the man is totally covered, the mask, gloves, and everything. This is where you take a leaf, cut it up in 10 or 15 little pieces, and put it in a petri dish and put the top on it. And in that petri dish, they've got all these chemicals and everything made up that is supposed to start to make this plant grow. This is a total scientific thing. This is where we get all of our new hybrids and our cultivars and everything that are coming from our big companies, Moravia, Proven Winners, the other big one that we get so many plants from. If you've ever wondered, how many plants do we sell in Hamilton County? Well, this is why we can do that across the country, because there are these great, big, huge places that have greenhouse after greenhouse after greenhouse. And then they have the scientific labs. And once those little leaves start to grow a little bit, then they put them out. This is like a spongy mat over here that they can put some of those leaves to start to grow, and they'll send their roots down through this little spongy mat that's there. And that spongy mat has got all kinds of chemicals on it and nutrients to give to these little plants. It was a really odd thing that I did. We had gotten new carpet mats for the car, and I had taken the old ones out and just laid it on the driveway. And evidently, somehow or other, in picking them all up, one of them got scooted over on the ground, and we didn't catch it. So when the fall came, the leaves just piled on top of it. So the other day, I was over and I was breaking some leaves away around the plant, and I looked, and there's this older car mat. And when I picked it up, it was full of baby plants. They had sucked into that mat, that old thick carpet mat, and they had put their little self down in there and had started to root. All these little seeds and so forth, it was weeds and everything had fallen, and it was full of little plants. And so this little spongy things here is what they will adhere to, and they'll start to grow. Then they put them in larger containers, and you see they're stacked. And every one of those little dishes contains probably 20 plants or potential plants. And then when they get larger, then they go into the containers like that. You can see there's 3 or 4 in there. When they get larger, then they're planted. And that's how they can produce all this. It's called tissue cultures. And this is a scientific asexual propagation approach to making many plants from just cuttings of leaves. And the last thing that we'll cover will be your hydroponics. Now, this has been around for probably about 20 years or so, but in the last 10, it has just really come into fruition, and many people are doing it. We have 2 of our master gardeners that have set a system up just in the garage or in the basement. And so we would have seen this at the expo this year. We did have it at our fair. We will have it in the fair this fall, and the system that the master gardeners are using. But it's a semi-way of a laboratory, and the fact that the water and the nutrients and everything go in a bucket that's kind of sealed off. So they kind of keeps the atmosphere from bringing in the germs and the bacterias, and then it grows. And they can you can do tower gardens this way. In Crossville, we have UT has an experimental station in Crossville. We have classes up there regularly, and this type of thing. And we were up there one time when we could go in the tomato house. And as you can see in this picture up here at the top, all the tomatoes are growing in buckets. This is just a bucket system. And then there's this water system that goes down through here. And this feeds all those buckets. And they put the nutrients in there, all the chemicals and so forth they put to go into the plant. Then there are some strings that they tie from here up to the rafters. And those tomatoes climb up through those strings. And when they got ready, there was tomatoes hanging on all the sides. And they will pick the tomatoes and they sell them to the local grocery stores and people up there, food stands and this type of thing. And when we were up there, they were doing a taste testing station. They had probably, I don't know, about 10 different varieties of tomatoes for people to come by and taste. And then that's how they were getting their poll on them as to, did they taste like a homegrown tomato? What did they taste like? And what do they look like and everything? And that was their test kitchen as such. And that's where we get all of our new varieties is through that process. But it was a semi-sterile invention to do that on that one, but that was the form of the hydroponics. So this is something you might want to read up on, and you might want to set up a small little thing. You can get a small little tray, and similar to what they had in the other slide back here. You can plant seeds in this little tray and have nothing but water down here for it to develop its roots. And those you can purchase and start some of the hydroponics, something right at home. And that pretty much concludes the methods of propagation. If there's any questions or anything I can help you with, you can either ask us now, or you can look up. I've got an email address that is SEW, the letter N, word garden @gmail.com. SewInGarden@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to answer anything that I know. If I don't know, I'll look it up for you. Back to you, Tom.
Okay, Carol, thank you very much. There's a little button. If everybody's looking at their button, there's a little button I found that you could do a thumbs up. Okay, what I'd like to do, there was a few people that came in a little later. Make sure you know where the chat thing is and put your name in there for to say you came to the class. Also, if anybody wants to just chime in and say what they liked about the class, you can also, right now, you can unmute not everybody, but one at a time. You can unmute your microphone and ask the question straight out. You'll get it recorded that way. But does anybody have a question that they'd like to say verbally? I see quite a few people are chatting.
I'm sorry. My question is on the tomato grafting. That's the first I'd ever heard of that. I don't understand the purpose. Like, so are you taking apart? It seemed like you have, especially if you have two plants, is it to create a different variety of tomato?
I
Yes.
can answer. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
What this for is when they try to make disease-resistant plants, they'll take one that's known to be diseased and try to graft it onto one that's got problems to see if they can put a gene into that plant to help it be more disease-resistant. Also, different varieties, hybrids, and also they've been working for a long time on getting low-acid tomatoes for people that have sensitive stomachs. So this is why they're taking plants that they know have a problem and trying to graft them to plants that don't have that problem to see if they can make that variety come up with a gene that will help it be a healthier plant.
Yeah, they've been doing this for forever in the fruit industry because we like different varieties of apple. Same thing for tomatoes. Sometimes the tops are very wimpy, and so they need stronger roots, and so that's a good way to do it. I understand from my cohorts up in East Tennessee where they have a lot of greenhouse tomatoes that some of the people do that. That's good. Most of them aren't doing it yet, but I think some of the bigger operations, as Carol was showing her, are getting into that, and they're looking at ways to produce. This isn't really a GMO. It's basically just grafting a plant to get that hardiness put in the top. A lot of questions. Ask them how to see it again. Okay, I am recording, so I'm going to keep on recording as we go here.
My son also told me that they do some of this for developing foods and things for the space program, for
Yeah.
be more compact and can be saved better. So there's a lot of different reasons why they are working to improve our food sources and make things better for us.
Back in the day when the space program is still going on, I used to work up in Nashville, and there was the biggest, I'm trying to think of the name. I used to have to go over there and inspect their property. It was the biggest African violet producer in the world. They had one in Nashville, they had one in Brazil, I think somewhere in, I recall they were from Germany, the family. One year, all the roses froze in the greenhouse, so they decided to change over to African violets, and it was an amazing place to go visit. You couldn't actually see a lot of it, but sometimes they'd have garden clubs. They'd go into this one greenhouse that they had all the different cultivars, and they had one that they were very proud of, that they had sent the seeds on a space flight. And during the space flight, I'm not sure how much, but some mutations occurred, and they were able to get different colors of African violets. If you know anything about African violets, people are always looking for shape and color. So it was very interesting. And when I talked to the owner, he said that I don't know if they stopped letting seniors go through their garden clubs go through, because people were so smart that they would, when people weren't watching, a couple of people would take some cuttings and put them in their purse, and so it was a funny little story that they were telling. Anybody else have a verbal question they'd like to have? I've got something else coming up here before everyone goes, so ask your verbal questions now. Okay, what I'd like to do, I'm gonna set up a poll here. I just launched it. So I'd like everyone to go into that poll, and you'll see two questions. One is, I gain knowledge from propagation webinar. And number two is, I'm going to use some of these ideas. Does everyone see that? I see people starting to find it.
I do, Tom.
You see it?
Yes.
Okay, good. We'll see if we can get 37 out of, well, we've got 38 people now. Yeah, just a rough and dirty. Maybe you knew it already and you might put did not gain, but I can't imagine. People, there's a lot of things in that talk. You may not all want, or may not are all going to do all those things. But I'm sure we're all going to try some cuttings and some seeds this year. Save some money. When I was at Michigan State for a while, we were one of the first ones to do tissue culture with asparagus. There was a nasty disease going through asparagus at the time. And so there was a big grant, and I was a technician. So I would spend time. I didn't have to suit up, but I have to keep my hands clean inside this chamber. And we'd take little cuttings and put them in those little jars. It was very fascinating. We came up with some things, some asparagus cultivars that were resistant to some very nasty diseases. And so it was a lot of fun doing that. We got 31 of 37. Anybody having a hard time finding the poll button? And we can just look at that. I don't know, can everyone see the results?
No.
You can't see the results?
No.
So let me just say them real quick. Let's see.
The presentation is still showing, so it's limiting what we can see, I think.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't know.
You can share.
Not sure. Yeah, we can play around with that. Let me just rattle off the results here a second. 3% learned 1 or 2 new ideas. 34% learned 3 to 5 new ideas. 34% also learned 6 to 10 new ideas. 34% learned over 10 ideas, which adds up to a little bit over 100%. And then let's go down here. Okay, 18% say they're going to plan on using 1 to 2 ideas. 69% say they plan on using 3 to 5 of these ideas or tips. 13% say they're going to use 6 to 10 ideas. No one really thought they were going to use over 10, and no one didn't plan to use any of them. So that's a neat little quick way. And this is something too, I rarely can do this in class. You know, I'll set out little pieces of paper, and people will either look the other way, but this is a good way to get 32 out of 37. That's amazing. 86%. You just don't get that kind of a survey. Did it for my 3rd Saturday class too, and that was a great help to get a lot of feedback. I could put, you know, it wouldn't hurt maybe down the road to put a couple more questions on different things, but I just wanted to keep it simple today. And this is really a powerful tool to tell our leaders and bosses and whatever, some of the things that we do. But if you want to still put in something in the chat, just put in any comments, how you like this seminar, and we'll share those with Carol. We'll share those with everyone. And so other than that, I think if anybody else has a question or just wants to say something, unmute yourself and say it now.
I will. Carol, thanks a lot.
Welcome, Bill.
I've learned a lot, which I always do from you.
I get just as much from you too.
Tom, are you going to give us how we can review this video another time?
Yes, that's my next challenge. I think I've done it before, but I just have to relearn how to take the tape. The tape after I end the meeting, the tape is going to download into a file. Then I have to take the file, and basically some people say I can just turn it into a YouTube, which shouldn't be too hard, or just copy it, turn it into, it'll be almost in the MP4, which is a easy to so yeah, I'll have it. Yep, we'll probably have a whole collection of them. It's a good thing I had 2 tries at this seminar, because last night it didn't work. I had the wrong toggle switch on or something. But
I really like this a lot better than listening to the YouTube videos.
oh yeah,
It's a lot clearer and I can hear it a lot better. So I really encourage you to use this as much as possible.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I'm going to be sending out a lot of the webinars, and some of them are better than others. I get them from different places. You'll see. I'll probably send everybody an email with 20 different ones. I've been trying to collect them. Some are given by master gardeners. Some are very good. Some are given by specialists. And I agree. I think even though if you end up watching so many videos that you've got your class requirements, basically I'm letting you swap out. Like if you don't want to listen to propagation or turf or whatever, we only have 3 more classes, right? So we got a lot going on. So you can watch pretty much any of those that I send out in as an alternate to the requirements. Requirements, we just don't have enough time to do all these great seminars. But I'm afraid to tune in. It's fun to see everybody's face and hear their voices. I don't know how many of the 38. I think we got up to 40 today. So that means we had more people. Maybe we had some mentors on board, but maybe we had some Monday night people. But that's very good. I really appreciate that. And we'll try to get the information. We're going to graduate, right? We're going to graduate. There's a special little pin that we gave to the class last year, and everybody who makes it to the end will actually get one of those pins as well. You'll see, it's a pretty cool little pin that we got for the 25th anniversary. So I'm putting it as a little carrot out there.
Hey, Tom, this is Peggy. I'm a little concerned about my volunteer hours, and I saw there was an email about how we can, an alternate, like I helped my daughter out in the yard for about 8 hours the other day.